Testing 1, 2, 3. All right.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, I did
Oh.
notice they've been digging up a
And
lot
we
of
also
names
have
lately, so I don't know if they're
this.
having trouble with them or not. Yeah, that's all good. But I mean, even, but it's like, but this is dry here so far. I mean, we're so rainy.
So I don't know. This
I
is
mean,
my
I hate to see it
signature
all
or
wet.
Yeah, I think you said your signature.
that's great.
2007.
Are we all set? We online?
I think we are all set.
All right. Well, then it's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, June 10th, and I'll call the meeting of the Finance Committee of the City of Stoughton to order. It looks like everybody is present. So we have a quorum, and I can certify that we are in compliance with open meetings law. Any public comment? Doesn't look like it. So then we can move on to communications and presentations, and I think the first one is the ARPA Fund recap.
Included in the packet is 2 sheets. The first one is just the whole historical appropriations list. The second page does indicate what is in the 2025 budget and what will be in the 2026 budget. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Just as a reminder, these have to be fully dispersed by the end of next year, correct?
Correct. 2026.
Yeah, unless it's the interest earned, then it's unlimited. And then there was a reminder today on the webinar I was on that we still have to report for a couple of years after, even though if the money's allocated, we still are required until the end of 27, I think they said, which you probably already know.
Thanks, Lisa, for putting those together, especially with the resolutions in there, tying the appropriations to them. This will go so that, I can't remember if this one is going to go in, that council will see all of this as well? Or is it just at this meeting?
It's just in this meeting. We can forward it on to council next time.
Yeah, I think then that'll give everybody kind of a reference point as to where we're at, what's been spent, all those sorts of things.
I just had a question. I'm not sure if it's a finance question necessarily, and maybe just an on the side note, but I had been asked about the composting plan. Did I see that on the sustainability committee meeting?
Yeah.
About how, whether or not that's been implemented or how it will be, or maybe that's still in the works? We can, if it's not, we can talk about it offline, but it's a question I've had, so.
I think Nicole Marie had a summary of that. And from what I remember, we were using money, that was the interest earned off the ARPA for that. So I think we're going to be good.
Yes, they haven't spent anything to date. They were inquiring about moving this beyond the 2026. It is interest earnings, so they could.
Any other questions?
Well, yeah, I guess at some point it'd be good to know people who are interested. I don't know if anybody knows how to tap into that or if that's still in the works. I guess that's really my question. Again, that may or may not be for finance, but.
For the composting?
Yeah.
Well, I know they were going to use some of it. They talked about Taste of Stoughton.
Yeah, so there were 2 separate resolutions. One was for food composting at events and one was for a residential composting program. The event composting program, the first expense will be for Taste of Stoughton. They're actually making it sort of the headliner for the event, that everything will be 100% compostable. including the trays, the utensils, everything, so that it's easier for users to, instead of having to separate their food. They're really excited about it and they want it to continue year after year. And then there are plans for other events in the future as well. As far as the residential composting program, there have been some conversations among a variety of people, including Innovation Center Stoughton and Sustainable Stoughton. And Sustainable Stoughton is putting together a proposal for a program that would have community drop-off sites versus a residential subscription program, which will be revisited at Sustainability Committee in the coming month.
Thank you. That
Yep.
that helps. Thank you.
As an aside on that too, if anyone had gone to Brockfest this year, the way that they were setting up their compostables and their trash compostables and recyclables was pretty impressive setup that they had. I mean, it would take stuff back and somebody would have to sort through and sort things out of there. So that was be kind of a yucky job if it was hot, but somebody did it.
Any other questions? All right, then the next item is the key budget dates for 2026.
So it was requested that we provide the dates specifically for the CIP committee. However, here is a list of dates for everything. I know there was concern about the CIP committee late August. Last year, I was informed that it was able to be accomplished in 2 meetings, which is earlier, mid-August.
Just in case anybody has to move their kid into school. And I know we made the calendar available. Will this list also be available for council or?
It is
Awesome.
available
Perfect.
to council tonight.
Perfect. Any questions on that? All right, then I believe the next item is approval of the minutes from 5/27 of 25.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, moved by Lisa, second by Brett. Any questions, comments, edits? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Next item is a resolution. And this is the resolution for authorizing the SRO program. Do I need to read the whole thing here or just at council?
No, you don't have to read the whole
Okay.
thing. I mean, I can give a quick overview.
Yep.
And the chief will fill in the blanks. But basically, the chief has been, Chief Jenks has been working with Dr. Keyser for several years now about reinstating the program. And the school board did take action last week. Chief Jenks and President Schupacher and myself have been going to multiple meetings to try to address any questions or concerns that school board had. And there's different components of the agreements. City attorney has worked on some of it. HR has worked on some of it. Chief has been working really closely with Dr. Keyser. So we're here to kind of continue the conversation that we've been having. We've been at personnel twice. We've been at, this will be the second time at finance. I think we've kind of given an overview once or twice at the city council just to keep everybody in the loop. And we purposely didn't really want to get ahead of the school district. But they're at a point now where they've taken action and actually signed the agreement. So they're looking for us to, see whether or not we want to take the next step. It would go from here to city council tonight for action. And, you know, if you guys want to fill in the blanks on the specifics, as much or as little as you all want to hear, we have them. Chief and HR and City Attorney are here. Dr. Keyser will be at the council meeting, is my understanding. What's that? Okay. So if you have any questions for the chief as far as how it'll work operationally, he can handle that. AJ from HR can handle anything regarding kind of the assignment, maybe tag team that. And then as far as the actual intergovernmental agreement, I think the city attorney would be prepared to answer those questions.
Chief or AJ, would you be able to describe like what this means, the assignment portion of it, of how that works with the officer that would take that role?
Chief? So what'll happen for the remainder of 2025, you have a grant that Chief has available that will control your funding. The assignment piece, I'm working with our new attorney, Pam Plore, to come up with what that memo of understanding will look like for that employee. It sounds like there was a meeting this morning at the PD or at some point where they were talking about what are the components and what should belong in there. This is not a new position per se, needing a new job description. What we're doing is having an MOU or an agreement with that individual for an assignment. So no different really than our K-9, same type of thing. The part here that'll be a little bit different is that an employee will be assigned to this. They'll go through a process and interview with both the school district and the city. From there, at that point, that individual will move into that position, so they're no longer on road.
Correct.
And we will need to backfill that position with another full-time individual, and that's where your potential grant might come into play.
Right, yeah. We're very happy with Bryant Foundation coming through to fund the position for the remainder of 25, so a half year's salary is going to be covered. I think I mentioned previously that we do have an active list to choose from, so we have a couple applicants to consider for when we do, when we backfill. Yep. That are on board. I've contacted the one of them, and they're definitely want to work here. One other consideration I kind of hinted at a little bit at the last council was that this will get us to like 25 sworn officers. It'll free up our road people for more discretionary time, and it'll get us just that much closer to the recommended, like the standard is one officer per 500. So this will nudge us in that direction too, so the entire community will benefit, not just the school system.
I think the other piece that I'm not sure if we've talked with you about this already, but it's having that one person assigned to the school who then understands and knows the kids. So when an officer is reporting up there, it will be the same officer that understands and knows hopefully what's happening there.
Yeah, the consistency with the entire campus, the staff, the students, being able to be that liaison between the officers working the road and the students at the school.
The other focus that we're going to have will be the education piece. So it's not like bringing in good cop, bad cop, which is one of the issues we had before. It's more of a partnership, and you have been working with Dr. Keyser on that specifically of what the kids are looking for, or what the school district's looking for in regards to education.
Right. We definitely want to be light on the discipline end of it. And we're looking at education and just informal counseling. I think building those relationships, because right now we're, for the last 4 years, we have missed out on a lot of opportunities with all those kids coming and going. We missed, the whole group of high schoolers that we had no day-to-day contact with. And I really think that's important as these students become one of us, a citizen that lives here and may have become familiar with some of the officers. I think just building those relationships is really important. And if I know it's come up at the school board meeting too, like what about kids that maybe are a little like, hey, I'm a little worried about speaking to an officer, and maybe we can break down some of those barriers and get those kids familiar with police officers and
And again, you're going to be going with a softer appearance as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like I'm in a everyday uniform. Typically the SRO will wear more of a polo, kind of softer look. There will be on occasion they'll wear a uniform. And then the SRO will also cover like outside events where they'll be in a full uniform, like the football game you frequently see an officer walking around at.
Just hoping that there's more approachability by not having so formal at all times.
Right. So I think the biggest thing for the Finance Committee is, obviously, we have a portion that we're responsible for paying for. So right now, the arrangement in the agreement is for a 50-50 split. And as Chief mentioned, worst case scenario this year, he has funds that he'll receive through the grant to pay the balance of this year. Somehow I'm guessing we'd have to do a budget amendment or something in order to make everything come out at the end once we receive that and it's allocated. And then the other thing would be is going into next year, we'll know that we're going to be committed to about 62,000, I think it was.
That's correct.
Right. Will be our portion. The school district is going to continue to look for other funding opportunities that they may be able to have access to or together if we can, complete grant applications or, whatever is available to help offset the cost. And then there's also time during the non-school year, and you can maybe describe how that works.
Yeah, absolutely. So the officer will be assigned to the school, will be there, when I'm there every day throughout the school year. So any of their PTO will be used during the summer. So right now the plan would be to have them work in a Monday, or continue to work Monday through Friday during the summer. But honestly, they'll be there probably about half the summer, just given they'll have to use all their time off that they've earned throughout the year, along with their vacation time.
What was the start date? July?
July 1st is what we have
Yep.
planned for. So before school
turnover.
starts, the plan is to get the officer to school resource officer basic. That's a week-long 40-hour class. And then as many other little trinkets that we can add involving or revolving around mental health and crisis intervention, getting them set up to be successful right off the bat. The school will also have the opportunity to kind of know the officer before the students are there, because as we know that the staff is on board a week before the school opens and get familiar with the office and the layout and start meeting people.
Yeah, I think a couple things we have going for us is we have 2 officers that currently or previously have been school resource officers, so we do have that experience to lean on. I know some of the administrators have worked with school resource officers in other districts, and they really advocated for this position. So I think that's beneficial. And maybe kind of describe like the chain of command, how this is going to work.
Right. Well, on our end, we created the sergeant detective 2 years ago, I guess, and that their role will be to supervise investigations, our community service officer, and now the school resource officer. So a lot more just direct supervision. And on the school side, they have appointed one of their staff members who currently is in charge of school safety to be their point of contact. I'll be a backstop, as will Superintendent Keyser on the other end, but we're hoping that will generate just a clear flow of command.
Is this assignment envisioned to be a long-term, so it's not going to be rotated every year? Or?
So it's a 3-year term?
Yeah, 3-year
Yes.
contract. Yeah.
So same person.
Correct.
Yeah, I think the expectation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so that would be the hope. And then after, there'll be an evaluation, ongoing evaluations of the position, and then the person that's in that position. But yeah, the hope would be is that the officer would be in there for the full 3 years and then kind of go from there.
Right.
Maybe at that point somebody else is assigned, maybe they would continue. We just kind of play that by ear and see what the level of interest is.
Tim, can you touch a little bit on how that, if it ends up not working out, or Rick,
Yeah, I think.
what that agreement
I've
is
explained that portion of
in
it.
regards to funding?
And if you need a paper copy, it's right there.
Sure. Well, basically, the parties both have pretty good flexibility, I guess, to back out of the agreement. It's basically just providing notice at the end of the year or prior to the start of the new school year that they don't want to continue the agreement. So there's flexibility for both the city and the school district to back out. So in that event, though, I believe the funding, I mean, they wouldn't be funding it for the remainder of the agreement. It would just be for whatever you fill out the remainder of the contract year, but that's about it. So there is some risk, I guess, involved with that, the fact that we're bringing on a new position. But I'd say that's fairly standard in these SRO agreements where, you know, there's a funding split, but both sides, at least in the SRO agreements I've worked on, both sides can back out basically at any time. So it's a pretty standard provision.
Yeah, and as I mentioned with the evaluation process, you know, we're hoping, you know, to avoid that. And I think there's even language in there where we could have another officer maybe come in. There's several steps that we would take before we would, you know, pull out of a deal or before the school district would, you know, want to do something different. But I know we're working on some other things too to help support the districts and the students, especially on truancy issues. So we think that this is another piece of the puzzle. I mean, there's a couple things on there that I think we can help with, and we can do it in a way where hopefully it'll be more of an educational way of doing things and not a punitive way. That's our goal.
This might be a little bit down in the weeds, but the schedule that the officer would have during the school years, the students have, you know, their spring break, their winter break, things like that. Would the officer work through those times, or is that a potential PTO time?
A potential PTO time. And of course, there'll be the staff days where they're working, you know, in service and so on. And depending on the topic, the SRO may attend or may instruct, depending on what the topic again is.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks.
Any other questions?
So, Rick, I'm going to just ask you this. From the financial side, if this does head south midway through the year, the school district then is on the hook for funding the remainder of that year, and then what happens in year 2 and 3 because there is an employee that's full-time? What's the intent there?
Yeah, so they would have to fund the remainder of that year. But so like, let's say in February, they say this isn't working out. They provide us the notice. So they have to keep the payments for the contract year, but then the remainder of the agreement, they would have to provide us notice. And then after the contract year, so I think it's June 30th, that would be the end of the contract year. So after that, the city would have to be, would be responsible for the full payment of salary and benefits.
The difficulty there being that their budget is offset from our budget.
Yeah. My concern there would be the risk for the officer. So you're potentially going to move somebody into this assignment. If things did head south, then from there forward, the city would be on the hook for that position, or would it be that there would be a layoff? And I'm pretty confident that in that MOU, they're going to ask for language to protect themselves. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that.
Any other questions? Lisa?
Well, just that I guess, and I could probably assume this, but that whomever the candidate is, we'd be candid with them about all of these risks of taking the position. We hope, you know, that wouldn't happen, but just wanted clarity on that.
On the MOU piece, why don't you talk a little bit to that?
Right. Well, so if it did go south. The person that would be most affected would be that person we're going to hire now. So, yeah, we'll definitely mention it to them as they're on, during the process here, the onboarding and during our interview.
So you're talking about the backfilled
The
position
backfilled
would be the
position.
one based on longevity would be bumped, not the officer
Not-
that's taking the assignment.
Right.
So yes, we would probably put that into the agreement for that individual. So that we know we've covered it.
If there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion.
Recommend to council.
Second.
All right. Motion by Brett, second by Lisa. Any last comments? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll recommend to council. All right, the next item is resolution approving revision number 2 to the state municipal financial agreement. This deals with reconstruction of 51 from Harrison Street to Roby and from Roby to B, scheduled for next year.
This one. You guys hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Brett.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, this is an SMFA or State Municipal Finance Agreement between the city and the state for construction next year having to do with 51. There are 2 agreements that have been updated. So each year they basically redo the opinion of probable costs for construction items related to the project that are locally funded, which would be street lighting, multi-use sidewalks. So basically, we pay for we want a 10-foot sidewalk. The state would pay for 5 feet, so we got to pay for the remaining 5 feet. Also, the underpass that's going to be installed north of Rutland Duntown Line, and the enhancements to the roundabout at Rutland Duntown Line. Those are a part of this. However, there's developer agreement language that would have a cost reimbursement from STI and Dvorak. So those are all part of this, but we would get reimbursements from them on the back end. So again, this is pretty standard. We've already approved this once, so this is revision number 2. Utilities approved this in May. And so on our end, we think it's, reasonable, and we'd ask for your support on this.
Okay. Question for Brett from Brett.
Yep. Brett, what was the what was the delta on this revision number 2?
Yeah, great question. I don't have it, but I can get it to you shortly. I do have that somewhere. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay,
Great
yeah.
question, though.
I'm assuming that it'd be like in a 10% range or something like that.
Yeah, and there's some things that happened during design over the last year that have increased some costs. Also, we did have some costs that were lessened because of some different grants from the state. But I'll get that to you.
Okay,
I have that breakdown.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
And this does not include, I'm trying to remember from the public meeting, this does not include the roundabout at B, but it does include the right-in, right-out at Holtz.
So yeah, Holtz is part of it. The roundabout enhancements at Rutland Duntown Line, however, are included in this because of the developer needs for that. However, on the back end, the city will get that reimbursed through a developer's agreement. But the state can't have an agreement with a private developer. So the state makes the agreement with the local municipality, And then we, through our developers agreement, get that money back through those means.
Fair enough. Lisa?
So if I look at this correctly, it looks like the total project is over 18 million and our portion is about 2.2. So if I understand that correctly, I mean, we're still getting a lot of improvements for a minimal investment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely benefits, obviously the state roadway, but our local users are the ones that truly benefit from this. If you'll notice too, 1.3 million of that is water and sanitary, and that is borne by the utility as well. So basically the city's side, if you will, the non-utility side is about 914,000, and not in this one, but so about 914,000 of that is city. On this portion, there's another one as well with the Roby to B. That's the second one that would have the underpass and the enhancements to the roundabout in it. There's two separate SMFAs. And also keep in mind too that these numbers will be in the CIP documents to review as we go through the process as well for 26.
Other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to recommend to council for this.
I'd make the motion to recommend approval of the council.
Okay, motion by Lisa,
Second?
second by Adrian. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that to council. Next item is resolution to approve cost reimbursement with Continental 877 Fund.
Yeah, so we'll let the city attorney lead this discussion, but basically, Continental is the group that is looking to partner with STI to build the Authentics in Stoughton, which would be multifamily, kind of out behind Sandhill School in that area. They were at the Plan Commission last night, so we gave them some feedback. And, as routine, we usually enter into cost reimbursement agreements. I don't know if there's anything unique about this one.
I guess the only one that's somewhat unique about it is STI is handling all the public improvements in that area. The reason we really need an agreement with them is the development just has a few potential uniqueness about it regarding stormwater and their compliance with like green space requirements. So there may be like a separate agreement with Continental and the city depending on which direction the approval goes. So that's why we figured it made sense to enter into a cost reimbursement agreement with them, even though like the development itself is fairly straightforward because there's no TIF incentive, there's no public improvements, but there are just some complexities with their project that could require separate agreements just in how they deal with ordinance requirements. But otherwise, the language is the standard cost reimbursement language that the city has for these.
I assume that there won't be a presentation or anything tonight at council for this,
No.
other than what you just shared.
Correct.
Yeah, if you're interested to learn more about the project, all the documents are in the Plan Commission packet from last night. If you want to see pictures and concepts, they're all in there. So, and this was part of the discussion last night.
We're just watching the meeting. It was interesting.
I'd ask you to elaborate, but I don't know. Any other questions All right.
I guess one maybe, in the case of, like, in this instance, in this development, if they had to do another TIA based on those entrances along B, who would bear, would it be the developer that would bear that cost? The sub-developer?
I think it would be Stoughton Trailers because they're responsible for all the public improvements. And with their phase 2, they have to, phase 2B, they have to do sort of a reevaluation depending on how they lay out their roads. But I guess I don't know what the original TIA said, but they would have had development assumptions on what the units would be. So I think the amount of units that Continental is proposing is in line with STI's original assumptions.
Yep. TIA's traffic impact analysis, instead of speaking an acronym.
All right. Any other questions? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll recommend to council.
Okay. All right. Recommended by Brett, seconded by Ozzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? All right, we'll recommend that to council. And the last official item is agreement for maintenance of Scotland Road, Williams Drive, Skyline Drive, and Burritt Road.
So I'll start with this one. We were approached by the town of Pleasant Springs about entering into a maintenance agreement for Scotland Road. They had repaved the road last year, and the request came in, it's been several months ago now, but it was certainly well after the road work had been done. So they asked us if we would draft an agreement with City Attorney Manthe did, in collaboration with myself and with Public Works Director Abear. We also wanted to really not only capture Scotland Road, but really all the roads that we share. And there's quite a few roads that we share with Pleasant Springs. We have some other separate agreements. We have one with Rutland for Oak Opening when we connected 51 West to Kettle Park West. We have another agreement for Williams Drive when we redid that several years ago when we built down by Glacier Moraine in that area there. I think that stretch is actually owned by 3 municipalities. There's us, Pleasant Springs, and Dunkirk. So what we're trying to do here is capture everything, and I can let the city attorney get into the specifics, but really the main point you'll see highlighted here is the town added some language in there where they wanted to be reimbursed for road maintenance, and I think that's probably going to be the major sticking point, and I'll let the city attorney take it from there.
Yeah, so I guess just a little bit more background. The current agreement we have with the town of Pleasant Springs, it does relate to, I guess I'll refer to as the southern portion of Williams Drive. So the city did the improvements on that, and under that agreement, the city is responsible for all maintenance on that road, even though it's under multiple jurisdictions. We don't get any reimbursement from any of the towns on that. So with Scotland Road, we originally, I mean, there's the maintenance essentially is snow plowing and mowing the right of way. And we noticed some other roads that were in the city that were also sort of multi-jurisdictional between the city and town. So we figured we would just try to wrap all of this in together just so we have clear responsibilities. Originally, we proposed that the town would do the maintenance because it's, I mean, these are such like small portions of roads that are like just through annexation that, you know, it's no one's going to lift up the snow plow if they're, you know, going to plow the street. But the town is seeking reimbursement for those costs. So they're proposing, I think, 50 cents per
Linear.
Yeah, linear, yeah.
Square foot. Yeah, so the reason they're requesting it is on Scotland Road, there are 2 properties that were annexed years ago, which we weren't even aware of. Those properties haven't been built out, so it's basically farmland. And so there's really no city residents going to and from that land. So that's why, I'm having difficulty wanting to provide any resources. I might feel a little differently if there was a house in there and it was assessing out and we're collecting major amounts of property taxes, but that's not the case here.
Yeah, and the other piece too is any road aids that the city would be getting for these stretches of right-of-way, that would be going to the town. I think the current reimbursement is $3,500 a mile or something like that under the state formula. I mean, we're not talking about significant stretches by any means, but originally we had proposed that they would be responsible for the maintenance of these stretches. If they wanted to perform any substantive improvements or do crack sealing or chip sealing, they would have to provide that advance notice to us. We would have to agree to it, and we would pay our proportionate share of those costs. But they are seeking an annual payment, I guess, for maintaining these stretches of right-of-way. So I guess we're just looking for feedback tonight on if that's something that the city is comfortable with, or if we just want to say no, we're not interested in sort of a reimbursement program for maintaining these roads. Like I said, I think maybe Brett can chime in, but I think the major maintenance items would just be mowing and snow plowing. I think technically the mowing would fall under the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. But
So what we had originally proposed, I think, was rational and fair. Whereas if there was a maintenance item like crack filling or chip sealing, that they would provide us a notice the year before, so that we could put that in our budget and plan for it together as a collective. Which obviously we're going to take care of our portion, and we want to do that maintenance on the roadway to preserve the life of the road. So I don't think it's fair to do a blanket payment to them, but if there is targeted things that they want to do, then certainly I think that we should consider paying for them through this agreement.
Lisa?
So I guess I'd be interested in more information about the whole general transportation aid, and at face value, that doesn't seem fair, but I don't know enough about all that. But I'm also interested to know, on a side note, what their interest in is in helping pay for the SRO and the senior center, because I don't know if they've been open to that yet. So it feels like this is part of a bigger conversation maybe that we should be having about shared costs.
Yeah, I can tell you that on the SRO, there's 2 portions of it. One is the school district, and the other half is the city. So in essence, the city taxpayers are paying twice. And we've talked about that with Dr. Kieser. And, in order to get it implemented for this school year, we really didn't want to get bogged down in that conversation and would want to have a longer period to have those conversations. We do have some agreements we're updating with the senior center that Attorney Matthew's been working on with Director McGlynn. And then we also have agreements with fire and EMS services as well. I think one of them is up in 2026, if I remember right. Can't remember if it was fire or EMS. So we're going to be maybe looking at those as well. So to your point, I think, my thing from the beginning, if we want to just concentrate on roads, we should talk about it holistically. So that's why we at least created the inventory, and Brett was able to pull that together. The thing that rubs me the wrong way is, the request came in after the road work was done, and then they want us to maintain a road that really doesn't need any maintenance immediately. And it feels like a one-way road here to them, and that doesn't sit too well with myself, because we know that the majority of the people that actually use Scotland Road are township residents, not city residents, except for when there's a detour going on. On a daily basis, we don't have city residents going down Scotland Road, they're going down Highway N. And we know that township residents quite often come in and use city streets to get all their goods and services. So, and I've expressed that, to the township officials, so it wouldn't be shocking to them if they heard that again. So that's kind of my position. I support having an agreement. I don't support at this point, exchanging monies. It's reciprocity as far as I'm concerned.
Any other thought? Lisa?
So just so I'm clear, my initial thought is I'm not comfortable with this agreement, but I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything as far as staff recommendations.
I think, and I don't want to speak, for everybody, but for myself and Brett and Rick, you can let me know. I think we're okay with the agreement, but we're not okay with most of the stuff that's in red that they added. I think that's the easiest way for me to state it.
I would agree with that myself anyway.
And so just so you know, what they've been doing is they've had it on as an ongoing agenda item for the time period. It's been, I don't know, several months now. So it's on their agenda every time they meet, whether there's progress or not. So we finally got to the point where we felt like we got it as far as we could go. We wanted some direction. We figured that we had the capacity to bring it here tonight and then ultimately, get it to the council for the council to make a decision. So that's why it's here tonight. In the grand scheme of things, quite frankly, it wasn't high on our list to do, but we still had a responsibility to fulfill our obligation to get it done. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, and I guess, the stretches of right-of-way we're talking about, Scotland Road, like, those are probably the most significant stretches, but, like, Skyline Drive and Skyline Court and Burt Road, like, those are all, like, some of them don't even include pavement. They're just, like, for some reason, the annexation lines ran partially into the right-of-way. And, like, Burt Road is just a small little stretch. Otherwise, like, the whole road is in the town. So, I mean, outside of Scotland, we're talking about very small stretches of right-of-way. So we can provide a map if that would be helpful if this comes back.
I think the largest portion is Williams Drive, which we maintain the lion's share of all of it, basically south of B. So that's, there's a couple different jurisdictions there, but still, it's the lion's share we're taking care of already through an agreement that was prior. I think it was 2014 or 15, somewhere in there.
So what I'm hearing, Brett, is that portion is longer than the linear length of the combination of the part that's covered by this?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think they're talking about square footage as well, not linear feet, in the red markup that they have. But the Williams Drive is the lion's share of the shared roadways that we have. I don't have a square footage for you on the comparison, but I would venture to guess it's double.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned we have an agreement for that, and I don't remember how extensive that agreement was. I know we replaced the road, and I think you've done crack filling in the last couple of years, and I don't know if that was all covered under the agreement or not going forward.
I believe
Good, Rick.
I believe it's a 20-year agreement, and the city just takes full responsibility for all the maintenance and improvements of the road.
Yeah.
On that southern Williams.
I mean, if the way I look at it, if they really want to push it, I'd also want to renegotiate that agreement. And if we do that, it's tit for tat. And like I told Pleasant Springs, if we go tit for tat, the only one that's going to come out on this deal is the attorneys. And they agreed, and the attorneys agreed.
And I mean, this is new to me, but it doesn't sound like a particularly great thing for us to pursue.
I think it's nice to have the agreement outlined, but certainly the money part of it is not anything that I think we should agree to.
Yeah, sorry
That
for
way-
clarity, that's what I
That
meant.
way, if somebody else is sitting here or somebody else is sitting in the chair at Pleasant Springs, they at least know what the arrangement was. Right now, we really don't have any arrangement. So I think that's the value of having a document. I don't think there's any value to the city for paying them any money at this point.
Any other thoughts around that?
Do you want a recommendation, or do you
Yeah.
have enough
I
like a
think we have-
motion, or?
I think we've got the guidance we need, just to say, I think the direction is we're not interested in a sort of annual payments. It have to be on a project-by-project basis.
Yeah, there's a couple ways we could approach it. We could do that, or we could vote on it without the language we don't like and send it back to them. I don't know how that'll go over with them, but one way or another, I'd like to get some closure on it too, so it's not festering. Because right now I feel like they think it's festering because we haven't been overly responsive. We've moved it along, but not very quickly, quite honestly, just because of our bandwidth more than anything else. So I think we could do it either way. But at some point, I would like to see the council take a vote.
I mean, if you think that, Mhm. So, Tim, do you feel that it would be better if we did pass the recommendation, or Rick, to get towards that closure, if we
Yeah,
passed a recommendation without the red line?
We don't necessarily have to do that tonight. If you'd rather come back with a clean copy at the next meeting, we could certainly prepare that.
Yeah, that's something that we could do. Like, there's not a major deadline or urgency to provide anything, but we could just bring back a clean copy if that's easier.
I'd prefer to work from a clean copy.
Yeah,
All right.
that seems better, and then we can get towards that closure piece. All right, so then the last item is future agenda items. Looks like June 24th, our next meeting, we will have audit presentation and a CIP debt issue presale report, and then some other items, affordable housing, some TID information, and the item that's always on the list. Anything else that we need to add? All right.
No, I would just say, take a look at those budget dates and make sure that that's going to work with your schedule. So if we do have to, reschedule them, we have time to notice everybody. But between now and then, we'll probably get some preliminary numbers to start trickling in as well.
All right.
I just have one quick thing, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
So Brett, to answer your question, the delta is $246,000. $125,000 of that is sanitary and water increases, and $120,000 of that is walkways, lighting, and then just general increases due to opinion of probable costs.
Okay, so about 15% or so on, from the other, or from the
Roughly.
previous? Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn, not approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Brett. Lisa seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? We're adjourned.